Today is September 19th, 2024. It is 4:01 p.m. and this is the Windham Elementary School Board of Directors meeting. And the meeting's being called to order. Let's see. So first off, public comment. Are there anyone, just so folks are aware, other than BCTV, we don't have anybody here in the school building. So far who you see on Zoom is the participants. There you go. Yep. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Let's see. I don't see any hands for public comment, so we can move on to changes to the agenda, which we do have some.
Yeah,
Crystal's hands up.
Oh, Crystal. Sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Crystal. Go ahead.
I just wanted to touch base on kind of the rumblings as to what is happening in the West River District. You know, a lot of people are concerned that maybe Townsend is going to close and everybody will have to go to Newfane. I just want to remind everybody to be thoughtful in your school choice, because for grades 7 and 8, we do not have choice. I investigated it thoroughly. We just don't. So for 7th and 8th grade, you will have to go to Leland and Gray, which could impact your choice for K through 5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good points, Crystal. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I know we'll likely touch on that more throughout the meeting and further pieces of the agenda, but Crystal, those are very good points to bring up, so thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for your due diligence. I know a lot of emails went through, a lot of document searching. Sorry it didn't go the way that you wanted, but that we wanted. But yeah, thank you for looking into all the documentation and the votes and stuff.
Echoed, thank you. Anyone else? I don't see any hands raised, so we can move on to changes to the agenda. We don't have a superintendent's report, so that needs to be added. We'll make that the first piece under new business. Okay. Also,
So I guess the other big one is Rory resigning.
which would go, I think, under correspondence, or do we want to add a section? I mean, we can also add the steps that we can talk about.
That's what I was thinking.
So under new business.
Yeah, so submitting a letter of interest. And then I guess, we'll talk about it more then, but.
Okay, so it's, the letters of interest we'll put under new business under the collaborative budgeting.
Yeah.
Anything else that you can think of, Daniel, that you would like to add?
Bob, I know that Heidi sent over some board documents like profit loss and different like FI, I think 24 stuff. Do they plan to join? It's cool if they're not. I'm just.
Yeah, Heidi's actually on vacation this week and is not able to join. So
Okay.
She's up in advance. And I mean, I can try to answer any questions you might have on that stuff, but I think it's somewhat straightforward. But if you have questions, you can also get them to her to reply via email or something as well.
Yeah, let's just do that, and we'll push it to next regular meeting. And if she wants to join, we can talk about FY26 and was it Act 183 and all that. So sounds good.
And then
Gotcha.
also, Daniel, when you had sent out this school board update, was there, I'm just trying to think because I was reading that before we got here. Are there things that were in that you would like to add to the agenda? It was very jam-packed full.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that. It was awesome to read all that. So.
Yeah, I talked about some programming. Actually, the first day of yoga is today. I can kind of just highlight it here. But one thing that I think as far as like a board decision is the estimate that Bill Dunkel gave us from the Energy Committee.
Okay, so under the submitting the letters of interest, then the next section under new business, we can discuss programming and
but specifically
maintenance. Which is
the window inserts. Yeah.
The window inserts, I think, is old business. So let's move that under the approved financials and
Agreed.
window inserts.
Yeah. Yeah, with possible action.
Okay. So, correspondence. So we did clearly receive a letter of resignation from Rory. And we will get to that. We'll add another section where we can talk more. Very sad, very understandable. These are hard times for everybody.
Yeah.
I wish Rory the very best, and can't thank her enough for everything that she's helped done for our community during this whole process. So, additional correspondence. Help me out here, Daniel.
Yeah, I could look through my email, but there's just been the governor's memo, which I imagine Bob is going to touch on a little bit. Chris already addressed kind of Leland Gray 7th and 8th situation, and then otherwise it's just kind of already a part of our agenda that we'll talk about the estimates. So
Okay.
yeah, I think we're pretty covered unless there's anything else.
So no, we can move on to old business. I motion to approve the minutes from 6/13/2024.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. So those minutes are approved. Now, August 8th, 2024. That was
our last regular meeting.
Last regular meeting.
Yeah.
And I have not seen, wasn't that
I think Rory
had
volunteered.
the intention of getting that done? And
Yeah.
that hasn't been. So I can do those minutes.
Okay.
So I will do those and get that immediately to the SU so that can get posted. And we can get that in there. Okay. I'm jumping along here. So approving financials,
Yep.
kind of a big one. So the pay order, let's see, Bob, can you remind us of the pay order number?
I can pull it up to pay order.
Second.
You got it, Bob, or you want me to pull it up?
Nope, I'm not yet. Give me.
All good, man. So there's pay order number 3. That was a pretty sizable one.
And what was the amount?
$59,707.92.
Okay, so with that, I move to approve pay order number 3 in the amount of $59,707.92.
Second.
Any discussion? So for folks that may wonder why that's such a large amount, that includes partial tuition for some students. So we're already starting to see that come through, and the bulk of that pay order is tuition costs. So
and the bulk of our budget for FY25 is tuitioning. So expect more of kind of lump sum tuitioning throughout the.
Yeah, you'll probably those in a quarterly way for most districts would be my guess, or half a year at a time, but probably quarterly.
Yep.
Excellent. And with that, just so that it's clear, I think both Daniel and I do need to do the electronic signatures on that, so we will get that done ASAP.
I have my electronic signature.
Oh, you already did it?
Yeah.
I will get that done ASAP. Okay.
No shade.
Window inserts.
There is another pay order. Pay order number 40.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, that is in the amount. Actually, that one says accrual.
I thought our previous meeting we did pay order for 40.
Yeah, I think so too. That's interesting. There's also another one in the amount of 173. Let me look at this one real fast.
Our last meeting, the one on the 8th, I believe we had 3 different pay orders.
That's right. Okay, so it is just the one. Okay.
So I think we had, just the one for that amount that I'm aware of. So
cool.
Awesome. Okay, and then, so back to window inserts. I know you had conversations with Mr. Dunkel.
Yeah, he sent us an email recently, and essentially he went through the building and costed out. Actually, you let him in, and then he did measurements of the classroom windows. He counted 12 medium storm window inserts with a plain pine border and 12 medium storm window inserts with a white border. The total would be about 1,300, and he needs to receive that payment no later than October 4th. My inclination is that we pay it through the Capital Reserve Fund and go ahead and authorize it through this meeting, and then we'll send that over to Heidi to get them the money so they can do it on the first week of November.
Okay.
So I just to pause you a second. I believe your capital reserve fund is for the bus. I don't believe it's for capital improvements on the building. So to move that from transportation purpose to the other purpose, you would have to actually have a vote of the town.
Pretty sure it's towards all capital improvements on the building.
It might be set up to be more broad than just bus.
Yeah, that's Michael has his hand up. Michael, do you have 2 cents there?
Well, I couldn't tell you which one is, whether it's dedicated specifically for the bus or the capital for the building, although my intuition was that only a small portion was to be reserved for the bus, but I could be wrong. On a side note, however, there was an email chain that was sent to the select board, and I don't know if you guys received that as well, that basically said that it would be acceptable and appropriate for the select board to approve rental for the building.
Oh, cool.
And that rental would be, theoretically, maybe to cover that window or those window inserts. There was a process that the town lawyer laid out. Effectively, the school board would submit a letter stating that rental is X amount, and the rental would be, from such and such time to such and such a time, and so forth. I can dig that email up and send it out to you if you haven't received it.
Then that would be great, Michael. Thanks for the info. Then I have a new inclination, and that's to write up a letter of I'm sorry, what's the term for it, Michael?
Submit a letter for the window rental, like for the rental.
It was effectively a rental agreement or something like that, but I can dig up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I think we have a rental agreement. I think I would like to. I'm not sure if this emotion, but it kind of side skirts the whole capital reserve question, because if we can just put in the rental agreement for the exact amount of materials for the storm window inserts, then I think that would be a good deal for everyone involved.
Perfect. So you'll draft that letter. I don't think we need to make a motion to have that drafted, and then I guess as the future communications go through, our next meeting, which is October 10th, so it'll be after the October 4th deadline for that. We should have had that squared away by then, right? Because they'll have gotten the letter. Michael, you're stating all that the select board needs is that letter?
Yeah.
That's my assumption. My assumption is that once you draft the letter, the select board will consider it and make a decision whether to accept the rental agreement as drafted, and then we'll either have the money and come up with the money for the rental for window dressers or not, and then you would have to make a decision from there. So if for some reason the select board decided not to, you might have to have a special meeting prior to the October deadline to make sure that you had the funds in place so that Bill could make the windows and so forth.
Okay, and I was clear with Bill that even if we don't have a rental agreement in place, even if it all falls through, like we're going to allot the space regardless. But this was just kind of a scratch each other's back situation. I think that makes sense. Do we do we need a motion for me to put the letter out, or?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so either. Okay.
So, and so that takes care of the window inserts.
Yeah.
So we're gonna move on to new business and superintendent report. Bob, you're up, please.
All right, thank you guys. So you should have the cabinet report for September, and just highlight a couple of things that have been added since then. You mentioned the governor's letter. I'll sort of jump into the other item on your agenda, which is the collaborative budgeting letter, because it's all kind of interconnected. As you guys know, that there's a commission that was created by a legislative act at the end of June, which is part of the yield bill, called the Commission on Public Education, the Future of Public Education in Vermont. And they are targeted with issuing a preliminary report in December. And then their final report would be the following a year later, and then a month into January of 26. And so both of these, the preliminary report this year and then the final report next year, will most likely lead to some legislative maneuverings, shall we say, and additional levers perhaps being added to contain cost increases on education for the state. And just even though you guys have, at this point, we'll have just a pretty straightforward budget with tuition and such, and the drivers and the levers the state uses to impact your tax rate obviously will be subject to some of these moves. So just something to pay attention to. A couple of things I've mentioned this before that they've talked about, and some of the drivers that are coming up include the excess spending threshold coming back for FY26 budget, and so you guys don't have to worry so much about staffing increases for budgets, for healthcare and all that kind of stuff. But the yield and that they're anticipating will be low, and so they're trying to figure out how they're going to raise all the money. And the governor has said in his letter there's a $60 million gap in the ed fund. So just things to kind of have on the radar. And because the reason that those organizations, the VSBA and the VSA and VASBO, which is the business managers organization, all sent out that collaborative letter about budgeting, is, as you guys know, the state formula includes it's a statewide fund. And so, the taxes that you raise to pay for your kids' education is actually part of a larger fund, and you have to pay in to get out, and so on and so forth. So it isn't just what you do, it's what everybody does. And so they're looking for everyone to kind of be approaching this in a, in a conservative way, I guess, about how people are going to create their budgets. And so after that letter went out, the governor added to it and basically said, yep, and I'm making sure my departments are instructed to have only 3% increases, which is actually a reduction in service. It's even with a 3% increase because of other costs, that it's a reduction in service in those agencies. So that will have an impact on the ed fund as well in lots of ways. Mental health spending in schools will become more expensive if the designated agencies like HCRS for our region have reductions in their services. The schools have to pick up the slack in certain cases. And so there could be increases in mental health costs in schools, and which could drive up tuition bills, and all that is all interrelated. So just want to have that conversation, and obviously it's early right now for you guys to be thinking about budget, and in a lot of ways the only variable you really have is the building and what happens with the building. So that's the one lever you have that you can manage, because the rest of it, as you know, when you get your tax bill, is going to be, it's not really directly tied to spending. There's a lot of other levers that you're aware of that can impact you up or down. So just that's really the big lever you have, is the building. And I just didn't know if you wanted to put that out there. If you had any questions, I'm happy to help. And we can, again, have Heidi and Lori at the next meeting if you wish, to talk more about an early draft of a budget, and so on and so forth. The SU budget is going to be developed in the next month or so. And of course, you guys have an element of that through your assessment, although it's only a very small part of the overall assessment being non-operational. But obviously there's an impact to you with that assessment as well. So that will be done and approved by the SU board probably in early November. And obviously you guys have representatives on that. The other piece about the SU board that I will let you know about is that the SU charter, I guess, has when they created the representation on the SU board from the districts, they had only one member designated for non-operational districts, and then the rest of them were based on size. And the only criteria they set out around the number was going to be based on how big you are, but they wanted to make sure that the voting power of the individual of the SU board could not be controlled solely by West River, which is obviously the biggest one. And so, in talking with the board chair, they're going to be taking action at the next SU meeting, which is their board retreat. And what they will probably be having a motion to do is to reduce you guys from 2 to 1 seats on the SU board. But they won't add, no one else will gain a seat. They'll just drop one overall member. And that way the West River contingent cannot control the SU votes with a majority or supermajority. But you guys would likely go just to 1. So that will be discussed at the next SU meeting, just so you were aware. And I'm happy to take any questions you have about that. I know that's a lot I just threw at you, but let me know if you...
Would you be able to talk about last night's meeting and maybe give dates for the other 2 meetings in the pipeline?
Absolutely, yeah. So last night we had the first of 3 public sessions to hear about the board's proposal for the potential consolidation of Jamaica, Townsend, and Newbrook into one site in Newfane, as Crystal alluded to earlier. There's been 6 years of study which have led to this. We had probably there were 50 people in the room and probably another 40 or 50 maybe in Zoom. I'm not really sure. I wasn't near the Zoom screen. To people hear the report and ask questions. Obviously for you guys, the impact would be that you still have your K to 6 choice, as Crystal pointed out, and you'd be able to go wherever you want to go. And obviously Newfane is the site that does make it a little bit more challenging for folks from Windham. And that was raised by a couple of Windham parents who were there, who were in Zoom land. So that's real and out there. As Crystal pointed out, for grades 7 through 12, you're still tied to the Leland and Gray Union. Obviously 9 through 12 is a public high school choice, which is open to anybody in the state, to any public high school in the state. But for 7 and 8, it's sort of still a direct tie to the West River for Leland and Gray on that one. The next 2 meetings, there is one next Thursday night in Jamaica, and that is at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. And the agendas and the links are all on the SU website under the West River agendas. And then the following week, I think it's Monday the 30th, is at the Newfane School, Newbrook School, also at 7 p.m. Again, also on Zoom as well. The slideshow that I presented is in a PDF form now up on the website, in the West River documents area. And in the back of that slideshow are links to, in the appendices, are links to all the documentation, the reports, the state reports on each of the building sites, and the facility condition index reports, just like you guys received one for your building from the state. And there's also the report from Stevens and Associates, and just a ton of other information that people can read if they have 30 or 40 spare hours to do so. So does that help? I will say one thing. My commentary that I said at the end of the meeting was, despite the emotional component of this, I know you guys have been through this, so a really civil experience. There were some questions, and they were good questions, and they were hard questions, and there were definitely feelings, but everyone was really respectful of each other, and I thought that was really great. And your Windham contingent who were there represented themselves exceptionally well, as you would expect and hope for. So, happy to take any questions about that specifically, but that's what that is, and those are the dates.
Thank you, Bob. Michael Pelton, I see your hand raised, and then Crystal, you'll be next.
I have a couple of questions. One is, with the implementation of the threshold, would our current budget have fallen below the thresholds? That's the first question. Then the second question is, there's rumors of a perhaps 20% increase statewide just based on healthcare and so forth for education. I'm wondering if the supervisory union, which has a pretty substantial impact on the district budgets, has thought about ways to reduce the budgets, maybe not 20%, but significantly to help offset some of that 20% statewide increase. As you know, our town, even with a fairly small education budget based on our district, the one district that we actually have control over the budget anyway, faced some pretty significant increases this year. And I'm really not certain how we can look at a significant increase next year. I think it's all well and good that we can hope that the legislature will be able to make some significant changes, although I think it really sounds like they're really, a year or two out before any significant legislative action could be taken. So I'm just wondering if the SU is thinking about ways to help mitigate some of those problems. Thanks.
Yeah, great question, Michael. So first of all, just to clarify, the 20%, what we're hearing is mid-teens, and that is a percent increase on the healthcare cost. So that would not be an overall, like let's say it's 15%. That would not be a 15% increase on the overall SU budget. That's just on the healthcare.
Yeah.
So when you factor that into the larger scale of all the other things, salary, benefits, and supplies and rentals and like all the other stuff that's in the budget, that it would be a much significantly smaller percentage than that. That's just the one little area. It's just a big concern because in a supervisory union, typically you're talking about 80% of expenses are staff salary benefits. So it is a big chunk for you guys. You don't have that chunk, and so that increase should not impact you guys nearly to the extent that will impact a school that has employees. The impact for you guys will be, yes, potentially in an SU assessment, but more likely in tuition costs as those schools that are receiving your kids potentially increase their tuition costs to help cover them.
Significantly, but yes, they did.
But I will also say that tuition costs are also capped. You can't increase the tuition by more than a certain percent each year.
Right.
And that number off the top of my head, but Heidi and Laurie would know that. And so even though there might be a cap, even though there might be an increase there, it will be capped for you on the payment side. So
yeah, I can take some of the other questions, Bob. Once you're finished.
Yeah, well, I guess that was the one that stuck by. What were the other questions that he?
Well, so the question about our budget versus the threshold. Go ahead.
We don't know that yet, but the one thing I will add is that as you guys gained students, remember the students whose parents pulled their kids to go to private school last year are now more students again. So your student count goes up. Now, not by the true number because it's a rolling average per year, but that will help you have a bigger denominator when you get a cost per pupil. So your cost per pupil could actually go down even though you're paying some more money in tuitions. So we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But it's hard to say where you would be on the cap right now. I think Heidi could give you a guess, and she did so for Marlboro. But you'd have to shoot her an email and ask her. Or if you want to direct me to ask her to do that, she could come to the next meeting with a guess on that one or a rough estimate. She could try to figure that out for you.
Yeah, and I think me and Heidi need to meet anyways. So I think that would be good to throw out a guess collaboratively together.
Yeah, it hasn't what that number is either. It's been a number they've been throwing around, but it's not official. So even to you're trying to compare an unknown against an unknown. It is hard this early, but I think we'll know more as the next few months.
Well, last night at the meeting where you guys presented the possible consolidation, there was a number, I can't remember what it was, but basically the student cost was reduced to, let's say, 15,000 and change, and that was going to be acceptable and potentially below the threshold.
Yeah, that's just based on the number they're tossing around right now. So it's right. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
So my assumption is that we're paying the statewide average, which is 19,000 roughly. 19.5 or 19.7 or whatever. So wouldn't that automatically put us above the threshold? And if that's the case, how do we, how do we mitigate that? That's a problem.
Yeah. So again, I guess this is a common confusion point, but you're paying that per kid, but your student count isn't an actual count of kids. It's a long-term weighted ADM.
Yep.
So your number
that we benefit from pretty heavily.
It's a bigger number than the actual number of kids. So that denominator, the bigger it gets, the lower your people become. So I wouldn't stress about that. Don't rely on the number of students you're paying tuition for and the 18 or 19,000 you're paying in tuition. It's relevant, but it's not entirely relevant, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and the other, and there's a couple other things I'll add. So I did look at it when I was looking at the revote taxes, and we historically have sat 10% lower in our budgets for the statewide average. That is through the AOE reporting, school district spending per pupil FY24, 23, 22, and 21. So each of those kind of paint the picture of we have, we don't know quite yet what FY25 will be, but we've sat comfortably lower than the statewide per pupil ranking. The other thing I'll note is that the threshold is not just the statewide per pupil spending. In FY25, it's also plus 118%, plus the yearly New England economic project inflation from FY25 to the current year. So when you consider those two things, even with healthcare, even with this or that driving up costs, you have the tuition cap. We usually sit lower than the state average, and it's another 18% plus inflation is on top of the statewide average. The other thing that I've noted and said in previous meetings is that we have reserve funds. If we need to take it out of that box and put it towards taxes, I think we should.
So let me just weigh in, because I did text Lori when we were talking about the reserve funds earlier.
Yeah.
The capital fund specifically. She said that the fund was created many years ago to fund a new bus. She believes there's 100 or so thousand in it, and because there was a contribution made in FY24. She said Carolyn Partridge was on the board when the fund was established, and that she may have more specific details about it. But Lori told that that's what it was, that it had been just designated for transportation. But you'd have to go back and see what the motion was and the creation of it. It had to have been created at an annual meeting. So there would be there'd be an article that the town would have voted on to create it, so you can see the language. So we might have to do a little research to find out how accessible those funds are.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if we need to bring down our taxes because of this threshold of statewide averages, of tuitioning costs increasing, healthcare increasing, then we can put it to a vote. And I think based on what I've seen in previous votes, we would definitely vote it back into the general fund. So.
Yeah, and so the other thing to keep in mind, and I don't have a report at this point from Cord, but maybe Michael has talked to him. But I know the bus had some repairs done recently, and I don't know how close we are to the end of the useful life on that. But that fund, you may, if you continue to transport, and that's a decision you can make. Then that bus may actually need to be replaced soon-ish. And I say soon, if not, I don't mean this year or next year, but like in coming 3 years, let's say, as well. So that is a factor if you did make a determination as a board to continue transporting at least the secondary students to Leland and Gray, and additionally whatever students are going where they're going. I do want to put in a plug for West River Transportation. When the bus was being repaired, they donated a bus to the Windham.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah.
So that's not us. That's the private company, but they did a great job, and I just want to throw them a public thank you.
All these are great people.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And that, I believe, is my report, unless you have questions.
Yeah, and the other thing back to the bus is that the projection that I have is FY 2030, and when they put in the to purchase the next bus and do a trade-in, when Cord went into the repair shop at the beginning of the year, It seemed like, based on what they were saying, that it was pretty on track for that. I know we had a recent setback, but other than some rust and some incidentals, it seems like the bus will carry us to there. But yeah, we'll continue looking at that, and I think that's another question for me to Heidi kind of put our heads together on.
So yeah, just to keep that in mind, so FY30, you're going to be building FY26 budget, so that it's like 3 to 4 years away. So that isn't that. Yeah, no, but it's good. Otherwise, in good shape, though. That's a good thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Crystal, you've had your hand raised for a while. Thank you for your patience there, but go ahead.
No problem. I just wanted to touch base on the possible consolidation plan. I just, that work was happening before I joined the board, and I actually participated in a lot of that work that happened. I just want it to be very clear. This is not a situation where the SU is trying to close up schools or the board had a plan to close up schools. This came directly from the state that the board figure out how to cut costs for, tax implications and many other reasons. So it isn't a situation where the SU doesn't care about other schools. The West River Board doesn't care about other schools. This is coming from the state, and this is just my opinion. It's always been my inclination that if schools do not choose to consolidate, that the state is going to end up stepping in and not giving people a choice. So I just want to make that clear.
Thank you, Crystal.
Yeah, I mean, the AOE did it to us and essentially said the same thing. We sent to Townsend.
Yeah. I think they were at a place where they were, as they said last night, they were tasked with either cutting programming for kids or figuring out a new model. And so this was a way to create a new model without cutting programming for kids, because they've been over the cap for years and still spending it because they don't want to cut programming to kids. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely the pressures from the state that Crystal mentioned is true. I view it more West River Board thinking about how do we not destroy programming for kids? How do we protect the kids, put them first? So if it means we have to shuffle things around, that's sort of the way that they are viewing it. So, but it's still going to pass numerous votes. And as you heard last night, there weren't a lot of people there yelling, yes, this sounds awesome. So who knows how it's going to go, right?
Yeah.
All right. Are there any other questions for Bob Tebow? All right. Thank you very much, Bob. Anything else that you have for Bob? No? Okay.
Actually, Bob, I guess I could dig this up in the 30 spare hours I have, but if it were to go through into a vote and pass, I mean, it wouldn't be FY26. It would be further down the line.
That's a great question, and not directly asked last night. I don't know that we have a direct answer. I think, if they had really started this process last spring, that the chances of having it operational, if it all, assuming it all passed everything, for all would have been significantly higher. But they still have to do a bunch of permitting. They have to have an engineering study. They have to make a purchase rental agreement or such. They have to lay a pad. They had to, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know. Somebody mentioned at one point in a board meeting a month or so ago that, if they couldn't do it by August, could you do it mid-year? And I thought back to when
it's way worse. Yeah.
I don't know if that's good, but
no.
But the longer they wait, the less they realize the savings. So mid-year they don't save as much in the first year because they're still operating a building. But it might take a little bit of time. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I would say the idea of we send to Townsend and then Townsend, the kids are displaced again. That would suck, but it does seem like it's going to be a little longer of a burn. Hopefully not mid-year though. Don't I don't recommend that as a board that went through that. That doesn't seem ideal, but
It's tough on kids, it's just tough on kids.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, as Bob had mentioned, next Thursday at 7 p.m. in Jamaica, also on Zoom, is the next meeting for that. And then there'll be another one at the Newbrook School on the 30th, also at 7 p.m. and also available on Zoom. So those who have more questions or more interest in being involved, and I would encourage as many people to be involved as possible, mark those days on your calendar and be there to listen and hear what's going on, but also share your feedback, because if they don't get it, then they won't be able to try to collaborate with that. So awesome. Thank you very much, Bob. I think we can move along to transportation stipends.
Yeah.
So
Actually, sorry, I just wanted to touch base. There's one more thing. Heidi, in the packet that Heidi sent you guys, you had asked at a previous meeting about the procedures in place for approving the financials. And was there something written that really authorized you guys to do that so that checks could be written prior to the full board approval, which of course right now it's a full board is both of you, but in general, and so she did provide the finance procedures that are in place that were recommended by the auditors.
Yeah.
That's been generally accepted practice based on the auditors for all the districts that currently do it that way. So the approval at the board meeting is really just to have it in the minutes to make it official, but the authorized signers that you guys authorized at the beginning of the year to do that work with the pay orders electronically is what actually authorizes the checks to be cut. So that is all documented for you guys, so you would have that, and I know you wanted to share that with the community. So that is in that pile of documents. I can ask if you want those pile of documents put into the official packet, so it's on the website, so the community can see it. We can do that, but it is available. That particular document is on the SU website as well.
Yeah, can you put it in our drive for the public?
I will do that. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, and it's great to see documentation from this. I did look through it, and yeah, it seems nothing jumps out at me as anything to be of concern. So,
all right, that was it. Sorry for interrupting.
No.
that's okay. Transportation stipends. So Daniel, go ahead with that. And
yeah, so had planned to meet with Heidi about it. This is kind of reiterating last meeting. So we do have a couple applicants, but we don't want to just drain the fund off of the current amount. I had a couple ideas on, say, like the distance traveled and basing it using a weight system based on that. But I wanted to get with Heidi, and it's something that Bob and I talked about. So it sounds like we have enough items to address or to talk about that me and Heidi probably should have a meeting to add this onto it. Does that sound good, Bob?
Yeah, and she's just out there, but if you shoot her an email, get to you next week and get a meeting scheduled, I'm sure.
Okay.
And just to kind of take off my school board hat, put on my parent hat here, I have 3 students that are on multiple waiting lists for private schools. So they are homeschooled and will continue to be homeschooled, but if they are accepted or there's a vacancy that comes up that they're able to go, no matter where that is significant driving. So we would at that point probably put a request in. So I don't know how that would work. I think that those are things to consider, when you have a meeting with Heidi to figure out if there's ways for other families that may be in similar situations that just really can't apply because it's not there yet, or may not need to. But if there's a way to figure that out, just to throw that out.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the point of so people would fill out the survey once they know, and you would do that once you knew. But my point to Dan when we talked was that you like you said, you don't want to drain the fund, and you don't want to pay a mileage rate per se, because then you're going to drain the fund. But one suggestion I made as a consideration, he was going to talk with Heidi more about it, was to think about what you spend on the bus, divide that by how many families utilize the bus, and then try to figure out like what's a reasonable amount per family, and then maybe use that as a starting place to have a conversation. So you get up with a formula to determine a stipend. It's not a mileage rate. So you have to figure out what that looks like. And it's absolutely not going to cover the cost of even to the probably never mind to a private school that's further away, but it will help families. And I think that's kind of the point, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So it wouldn't be per mile per se, but it would be kind of the percentage of per mile. So how much one family has to transport versus another family, and then a weight on like what Bob suggested of like how much the bus would cost, and then kind of back into a number. And that way every family that applies would have something that would not drain the fund, but would provide some relief. So, but I'll talk to Heidi about it. But that's exactly like the consideration I was thinking about of late applicants and making sure that the fund is robust enough to really cover as many families as possible. So,
Awesome.
cool.
Okay, moving on. The letter for collaborative budgeting.
Yeah, and I mentioned that earlier. What they talked about all the different drivers for budgeting, and basically asking boards to, think about all those drivers when they develop this year. And you guys can certainly talk more about it if you want in detail, or you can wait and see how things shape out once you get a rough estimate from Heidi and go from there. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. And we could talk if you want to, but really just to make you aware of the communications and then the governor's follow up. The NEA also had a follow up to its members. But of course, we're not NEA members, so it doesn't apply to us. But they, obviously have concerns about the governor's letter. So, anyways, that's just another group out there. But
Yeah, I say let's get a draft together and then go into the collaboration with others. But yeah, I'm pro the idea.
Yeah, all right. That was all that was really, just to bring your attention to it.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, to submitting letters of interest to be one of the directors on the school board. So, Bob, you had sent me kind of the process of how that goes. I don't know. I'm like hot flash palooza here today. Would you mind jumping in and sharing that, since my thoughts are not as collected as I'd like?
Absolutely, Abby, no problem.
Thank you.
So in short, basically the law provides that a position should be filled or must be filled within 30 days. But of course, what we're seeing in other places, right now in Marlboro, it took them a while. In Wardsboro, they still have an opening. Is that if there's not people interested, it often takes longer than 30 days. But that's what the requirement is. Once you guys have a name, if you have multiple interested parties, then you could, in essence, do like a little candidate forum as part of your next meeting, where they could talk about themselves and why they think they should be on it. And then in essence, the two of you pick the replacement. I believe the select board can make recommendations, but they're not binding. So that happens as well. So there's lots of different avenues, but in short, the best way to do it is to get the word out. And what I sent Abby, and she can share, is a bunch of materials from the VSBA that have templates and stuff to get the word out and to try to figure out how to word what you're looking for. And so that information is basically just to get the word out that you're looking. Interested parties should send an email. They can send it to me or to Abby as the chair. Either one is fine, and she and I can connect and make sure we have the full list ready for that next board meeting to talk through and go from there. What was the other piece I want to mention? Oh, so the term, I believe Rory's term, was it ending this year anyways?
No,
No,
that's
it's-
me this year.
It's the next year. Yeah.
So basically what happens is that term, you'd be filling that term until
Election.
right. And at election time, you would
Similar
fill
to what I did.
someone for that if it's one more year, that 1 year that's left. So that person would not be looking at a 3-year, just a 1 year, but for next be through the town meeting. So it's a good way to get someone, to convince someone to try it, because it's only a few months, and then if they like it, they can get on the ballot to stay on. So it's a good trial basis this time of year.
They get a try before buy situation.
You got it.
All right.
You got it.
Thank you, Bob. And again, just echoing that, how grateful we are for the time Lori was able to dedicate with us here, and wishing her the very best. Programming.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I sent out an update. We have yoga.
Michael's got some.
So this will be the first day. We're running it for about a month. Thursdays at 6 p.m. There's some question of like Tuesday mornings as well. But a lot of this will just kind of be fluid and based on participation, how many people show up, how much the donations look like. Right now it's going to be a sliding scale, somewhere between like $5. I forget what I put down, but I put it in the school board update, but I can disseminate it further. We have a couple of events as well coming up. So we talked about the Energy Committee coming in to do window inserts. The workers union is coming in to do an event, and they're planning to do a more recurring situation. So they'll come in every other month or every month and do some type of satellite to their organization here, seminars, workshops, etc. And then the other one, I forget what the other one was. I do apologize.
Historical Society?
Yeah, Historical Society and private childcare until it becomes official is already in here. I was going to look back at my school board update to remind myself. Oh.
I hope my makeshift fan isn't picking up on the speaker. I'm sorry. Oh, goodness.
Yeah, that was kind of the gist of it. There's a couple of others that will kind of come in tow. So local musician Johnny Vinyl wants to do music classes here. We have outdoor after school program that Sally and others want to run. Events like you mentioned, the Summer Fun Day, which if you want to give an update to that.
I have not been able to I've had a lot of stuff going on outside of school board stuff. So I have not been able to focus on a family fun day, but that does not mean it's...
Could be an autumn fun day.
I will not give up on it. I just, it did not happen in the timeline I was really hoping for. So more to come on that.
The other thing I'll mention is that I did join the select board on Monday.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so we talked through and got the town's feedback. This one was a little less structured because we're waiting for you and Cord and Jessica, I believe, and maybe you have more details here, met and we're talking about the overall town. Not just the districts, but the overall town, all of the buildings and the needs for the community. So we're hoping to bring Jessica in on a future select board meeting and have the school board as well to have her moderate and kind of talk over what you guys discuss and what her findings are. And
I see Kathy Edgerly is on, but maybe Kathy was also a part of that meeting as she connected Cord and I with Jessica. So Kathy, would you be able to speak a little bit to that, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
So, yes, I can. So there's basically two parallel tracks. And one of them is that we had applied as a town for an MTAP grant, and that's municipal technical assistance for planning. And so we didn't make it because we weren't ranked high enough. But we were told we did a really exceptional proposal. And so they wanted to try to find a way to get us money. So we found out that we did get our $10,000 from the Vermont Council on Rural Development. And this is for a planning proposal that we also have $4,000 set aside from our MERP money. We could possibly add that in if we needed to. And the idea of this is to do a master plan at actually we have a lot of data on each building, but it would be to do the master plan to get started by saying, these are the 5 facilities that Windham has. And we'd have to get so obviously Windham Town owns 3 of them. And then there'd be the school. So we would ask you if we could include you in our analysis. And there's the fire department. We would ask them if they could, if they wanted to be included. And then basically we would say, what do our facilities allow us to do? And then starting in February, we're going to do the companion piece to look at what does the community want. So everything takes time, and I know there's going to be pressure for you to get rid of this building before this entire planning work is completed, which probably won't be until June of 2025. So there was talk of creating a community trust, and we had submitted a grant for that, but we were not in the first layer of people. And I think people need to understand that as a town, we have a lot of weird things that make us sometimes not the most, we don't get the highest points because we're not an energy burdened town. We're not in the lower part of our median income. We're odd because we have 1,000 other residents who aren't able to vote here, who aren't residents here, but who certainly are still part of our community. And so what I am working on right now is the request for proposal to go out for the master plan facility assessment. And I will be sending a formal letter to you all asking if that building could be included. And we already have a very in-depth physical assessment. This would be more like the report would say, you have got this building. The highest and best use for this building, based on the way it is configured now, is this, and activities that are like that, and that. And one could imagine with the meeting house, someone would say, well, the upstairs is theater style seating. Or even though we can have 220 people there, one cannot imagine having a square dance because those pews are not movable pews. Now, you could come on and say later, let's do movable pews, but for the moment, right, then they might say the downstairs has an occupancy load of 75 people, but it has a full kitchen and it has really great bathrooms, blah, blah, blah. So that's the physical master plan. Almost like last night, if you went to the meeting, it really was very much physically oriented. Like we could just take our school and dump it right into their pattern, and wouldn't be a bad idea. That the plan that Stevens Associates, in fact, Stevens Associates, I'm sure will bid on this RFP. So we'll end up with, some people might say, well, we're kind of doing the cart before the horse. Some people would say first you do a long range plan and then you do a master plan. But since we have so much data on these buildings, and also it takes a bit of the emotion out of it because we're not making a decision about what to do with the building. We're just looking at it and saying, what is it good for and what is it not good for? Where is its asset and where is its liability? What kind of long-term maintenance? What has been deferred? Things like that. So the problem, not problem, but obviously if the town had this in hand before they decided whether or not they want to pay $1 for the building, that might be helpful. And I don't think that is going to, I don't know, this report could be done possibly by February. So
I'm kind of close for articles.
Yeah, maybe we could push them to January. I don't know. And then I also, if you're interested, I've done a deep dive into what is a community trust? How do you establish it? What do you need to do? So we can get the help of the Vermont Council on Rural Development, even though we didn't get grant A, they would still help us and we could get into next year's grants. But basically the point of a community trust is to be able to do things in a more nimble and facile way than a town can do it, because it's basically a 501c3. And so it can fundraise, it can have grants, it can make decisions without a whole bunch of people voting on it, basically, because it's a board. And the idea is that you put together a community trust board with community members with a mixture of perspectives and skill sets. So you need some finance people, some legal people, some architectural people, some historic preservation people, some just plain old community organizing and engagement people. We need to look at our underserved population. We need to look at the local history. A good project manager would be wonderful, someone who understands communications and business planning. And I do think we have a lot of that talent in our town. Now, getting them to want to be on a board in a town that doesn't have the best track record of being hold harmless, right? So, but it's hard to imagine people yelling at people, this kind of a model, but anyway, so we would get those people together, and then they could create a 501c3. And if you look at some of the towns where this has happened, because it was led originally by the Preservation Trust Vermont, who is our partner on the Meeting House Broom Grant, they were really focused on saving general stores. So if you look at a lot of the towns, what they did, they created these trusts so that they could own and operate these general stores so that they wouldn't go away. So there's Rupert, East Calais, Albany, Elmore, North Bennington, Woodstock, Barnard, and you can look and see what they did, but a lot of them did their stores. So I think there is one example, and I sent you all that article about someone looking at the same thing with an abandoned school building. And there was one in Danville that was an abandoned school building, but it was a private school, but still it was a school. So I think it would take some organization to say, and I'd be willing to hold a meeting and to try to get a meeting around who might want to do this in town.
That'd be great. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
But in the meantime, I've got a big grant that's due next Friday. That's my big priority. And then I would move to the RFP and trying to get that out as soon as possible. I have it, I would say 85% written. And once I get the other grant done, I'm going to meet with Cord. I've never done an RFP through the town, and I just want to make sure I do it right. And then, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
If we can
Does
get
all
on
that make
schedule.
sense?
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Then there's one more thing I want to put a plug in for, if I may. Last night in Bob's report, I thought one of the most compelling things was the revised population estimates. And you could see this plateau. I mean, yes, they were going down, but they were going down by 10 or 15 students, not by 115 students. And my guess is that we don't know what's happening within migration, because Vermont still remains a popular place, but the employment and the housing obviously make it more difficult. So the Windham Regional Commission is doing a study, which I wish we were a part of, but we're not, but we can still benefit from it. And it's a 4-town housing collaborative, because we all know if we had a lot more housing, we would have a lot more people moving here with child age children, because people who work in Brattleboro that I know have been looking for over a year to find a house to buy. There's 5 guys just on the Windham Regional Commission alone. But anyway, so they're doing this four-town housing collaborative, Jamaica, Londonderry, Weston, and Windham. So clearly what they see as mountain towns. And every time someone talks to me, they say, well, we in the valley, and they clearly do not mean us. They think of us as up in the mountain, but yet I'm not sure Jamaica, Londonderry, Weston, and Windham think of us as their partner either. Otherwise, we might have been invited to this. Regardless, it's a 2-hour meeting next September 24th at Floodbrook School. And then a day later on the 26th, it's another 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Floodbrook School. And they're going to talk about a housing needs assessment, the end of this work is not a new plan or a regulation. This is done with the AIA, which is the American Institute of Architects, and they have a foundation that they help communities with. And then Windham Regional Commission is sponsoring this. But I think it's very important for us to look at housing. And, if we wanted to hire people and they came up and said, well, where am I going to live? So, we're not a direct participant, but we are a participant. And I'm going to be going to both of these. And I don't think they are on Zoom, but I have a question to Chris Campany to find out. And
you said that was September 24th and when? Oh, so that
the 26th, yeah. The 24th and the 26th at Floodbrook from 6 to 8 p.m.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, we'll try to get the word out through school board updates.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super appreciate
I can send you a link. I'll send you a link, Daniel, so you have that.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, I think even if the report gets done in June, even if it gets in February, January, just going through this process of what does data driven look like for this type of decision making around the schoolhouse. I think that'll open up a lot of doors and figure out exactly even if we're removing what we shouldn't be doing with the schoolhouse. I think that's helpful. So
absolutely, I totally agree. And Daniel, if you haven't, we talked about this before, but I find Patrick Eubanks is extremely responsive. He's our fire marshal. He used to be, then he went away, now he's back. I mean, literally, I called him 3 days later, he's over there. And before the sun sets, I have a report with an occupancy load.
Perfect. Yeah, that's actually a part.
I think that's important.
Yeah, some of the takeaways from the select board meeting that I joined was community trust, as Kathy brought up, possible sharing of space. So town office is very cramped. So are other municipalities. Can we get a proposal from the clerk, from anyone else, from those facilities that we would like to use this as a conference area from this time to this time, or things like that. Another thing was mentioned was emergency shelter, and that directly ties into fire marshal. It'd be great to know exactly what our occupancy limit is, because we don't really know right now. And then
and probably your bathrooms would have to be looked at a little. I mean, there's definitely requirements by FEMA, but there's also warming shelters, which are different from evacuation centers, and the criteria is different. So you might look at the whole spectrum.
Yeah, and then there was plenty of others. Apparently, there's a grant for pickleball courts, so that could be an option. Walking trails, picnics, a public park. Certainly, we have the playground, and we have facilities.
And also, I really a letter maybe from the school board to Andrew French, who is the person who's responsible for the Fish and Wildlife, 40 acres directly across from the school.
Yes.
What are the plans for that? And
Yeah.
how would that impact what might be best for, I mean, you could think of crazy things like, okay, the town buys the building and moves their offices and then does something else with the town hall. I mean, there are always a million different options out there, but there are pressures that you all have, and those have to be respected.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. So if there's not any more updates on programming, I think that unless do you have anything else that you want to bring up, or you hit all the stuff in your update?
So one thing I wanted to mention is I mentioned at the select board, I have been talking to friends of Windham Schoolhouse. Kathy, you've definitely stepped up in a lot of different ways of helping with that organization. So they are a nonprofit organization that famously helped out with the school in a number of ways, but the auditorium or gym here, they are interested in getting involved with programming and managing as we start to get more sophisticated and get more programming in here. So there's nothing concrete yet, but I just wanted to bring that up. I already mentioned it at the select board.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So, do you want the honors of the next one, or are you making the motion to adjourn? Because I think we have hit everything on here.
I make the motion to adjourn. The time is 5:12.
Okay, I second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, folks. You have a wonderful night. Super appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Stay safe and healthy.
Bye.
Bye.